it was probably Stephen King novels. I read It when I was 10 years old, and I think it came out of the fact that Stand By Me was like the first movie that I realized, like, oh, this is what movies can do, and that was when I was 8. And somebody said, that was a short story written by this guy named Stephen King, so I went and read the novella, and that was like one of the first like adult grown-up books that I read, and then that led me down the whole rabbit hole of Stephen King books, and I loved horror. So I read all the Dean Koontz, I read all the Stephen King. I outgrew it, but for a while there, it was like that, it was all horror novels all the time, and that's what got me into horror movies, and like, I got a subscription to Fangoria, which all paid off when I ended up in Cabin Fever, and like when I was in my early 20s, it was like, oh, this is exactly what I want to be making. So it was like a callback. I definitely am less into horror movies these days, but yeah, no, I think that was my first obsession. I'm definitely going through a podcast phase, and I've been going through it for a couple years actually now. So one of my favorite things right now is just some really good podcasts, like the one I've just discovered and been obsessively listening to is called Myths and Legends. And it's just a guy he goes through and tells like great old myths and folklore stories from every culture around the world, and tells you the sort of backstory of them and weaves the history in while just telling you a great story. Another one is Karina Longworth, I think is her name, and she hosts a show called You Must Remember This, which is an incredible Hollywood history podcast, and she finds these sort of forgotten stories from the 20th century. Sometimes it's the life of an actor, sometimes it's just a debate between two actors, or something that was going on. And she's been doing a series on the Blacklist, the Hollywood Blacklist, that is incredible. So yeah, podcasts are my favorite thing, and I think it's all coming out of the like public radio revolution that happened in the late 90s and early 2000s. This American Life and storytelling, it's sort of come back into podcasts, and I just love it. There's so many options out there.